Welcome to the Wednesday Night Group Podcast. We're still looking for an official name if you have any ideas. Otherwise, we are the, what do you call it? We're Dennis Blue, and that's the royal we. And Jeremy Lynch, two of the founders of the Wednesday Night Group, and so much more. Chefs, caterers, speakers of Chinese. I don't know. One of us does that.
Forget about it.
Right? Welcome. Hopefully you are here to learn something or to just be entertained by two people that have been around the block a few times. But tonight I figured we were going to talk about the subject matter, at least that we have on hand, and it can go all over the place. But that is JKD, is Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune actually any good? Is it, does it have any value today in today's MMA client? Was Bruce Lee any good? We're going to be getting into those questions a little bit, and feel free to send in questions, whether you're watching this video. And by the way, yes, we are on Zoom recording this. We don't have a studio at this time, but we know that some people might not know how to do podcasts and might just pick this up on YouTube. But
now.
Yes, we're gonna get going, and we're gonna get all over the place and everything. Our good friend Tom is gonna help us figure out how to really do this right. But anyways, but yeah, talking about actually Jeet Kune Do, I have a quick story that just happened today. I won't use any names, even though I don't know the person, but I won't use any names because they may listen to the podcast, and I don't want to embarrass people down the road or anything. Although the one that I'm mentioning should not be embarrassed. This is a good story. One of my students, and actually one of Dennis's students from years ago, Daniel Burke, has a little mini class that he teaches, just a small beginner's class. And he found out that one of his students, he says he kind of calls me up, tells me that one of his students is going to be getting into a fight today, or something like that. I'm not telling you which date or which time. I'm just saying that it's as if it's current, right? And I'm like, what? It's like, well, this sort of gangbanger, gangster kind of guy is pushing it, and it looks like he's not going to be able to back out. Now, this student of his has not been training for very long. And all Danny was able to do was give him some basic principles. They've worked on hitting, they've worked on footwork, and they've worked on, what it looks like when somebody's trying to take you down, things like that. As far as a grappler goes. Now, again, we're not saying that this person is any kind of expert in that. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So I was a little worried for him, so a little prayer for him. Don't know him personally, but that was what Danny asked me to do. And I got the call later that, yeah, he won his fight. And he did fine, and he took. This guy is known. The guy that he was fighting is known to pick fights, and maybe he's trying to get his rep in the little tiny gangs in the area. We're talking high school age people, and again, so I'm glad that nothing worse came out of this. I'm not saying that I would tell people, if you know a guy that's in a gang and he wants to fight you, to go meet him somewhere and fight. I wouldn't do that. I mean, you don't know when people are packing and when they have 15 other people. This seemed like something that just wasn't going to go away. And he said, okay, and he took care of it and again, now, does this prove anything about JKD? No, not really. But the fact is, it's encouraging to know that somebody at a low level without any fighting experience going against somebody that is known to fight, is known to beat up on people, that this guy was able to take care of it and take care of himself, and he came out without any marks on him, from what I hear. So yeah, exactly. And so the idea that, going back to JKD, people get really hyped up on the internet now, and they say, well, it was good for back then. It was good for back in the 70s, and people were point sparring and point fighting and all that. But JKD wouldn't work today. JKD wouldn't work in this climate, this MMA infested climate that we're in, that has everybody at the cage, ground and pound and all that, with boxing and et cetera. So, but the fact is, I think people misunderstand what JKD is and was. And so just finishing my kind of intro here on this is that my point is that there is a foundation. We talked about this in the last podcast. There is a foundation to JKD, but if Bruce Lee was alive today, yes, he would be evolving, but he would not be evolving away from scientific principles. And that's where people get really messed up. And we won't go, I don't want to go over the same ground we already went last week and talk about that too much. But I think that as you see the way people fight change, I'm sure Bruce Lee would be changing and updating his drills. But where you see some people thinking that they're doing Bruce a favor and they say, oh, well, Jeet Kune is now Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Kali and boxing or whatever. And they've completely missed the picture as far as I'm concerned. What do you think?
I think this lighting sucks. But anyway, sorry.
Take 6.
Well, I don't know where to start with that one because it's, to me, people don't have I don't want to say broad enough mind, but they have a limited perspective. Probably because things have been so diluted coming from this person to this person to this person to this person versus those people who learned in magazines and books and watching movies and imitating Bruce Lee, not understanding that most of the stuff that he did in the movies was theatrical versus reality. The other thing would be, people also forget that Bruce did. I look at the Tao of Jeet Kune, for example. There's a whole section in there referred to as the studies on or the studies of grappling and takedowns and so on and so forth. Because a lot of people probably forgot that Bruce did work with Judo Jean LaBelle and Hayward Nishioka, who was a judo champion back then, and I do like one thing that Tackett always mentions is that the purpose of the JKD, especially on the stand-up aspect, is to become so proficient as on your feet as to not be taken off guard so that you end up being taken down. So the whole idea is to try to maintain that personal space and that measure so that you don't put yourself there. It doesn't mean that you're never going to be in that situation, because I tell you, in reality, that's happened to me twice where, I stood my ground, but I stood my ground in the street and I stepped back and hit a curve, and the next thing you know, we're on the ground. So that's one aspect. And another time I slipped on cobblestone and the guy ended up on top of me. But what do I do? Put up my hands and say, well, that's not what JKD is. I don't do that.
Yeah.
Or, and it doesn't, I keep moving off the camera. Maybe I should move the camera instead of moving me. There you go. Just there, right?
Yeah, you're moving me.
It's all right. You got the picture of you in the back. But anyway, so it's really difficult for me to try to keep a diplomatic perspective or response because a lot of people, frankly, don't know what JKD is. I, and I really hate to pick on some of these guys who are more well known or more public than I am, who have schools and who do these seminars and travel around and boast of all their battles. I have 465 fights a year, and on the street you got a psychological problem. But
Yeah.
but I don't even know what I was talking about. But what happens when people don't understand the basis or the premise, the foundation of JKD, is they continue to do the same thing, ad nauseum, pak sao, lap sao, chuk chung choi, which is, it's okay. But you know what? That is not JKD. So what do other people do that they don't have that foundation or the understanding? So they'll go back and they'll revert to learning, well, JKD is Wing Chun, so I'll go and learn Wing Chun, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. It's good to have a foundational understanding of why Bruce made the turn from where he was to what he did. Uh, like I love Wing Chun. It's not what I do because it's not my forte. There's a lot of people out there who would be a whole hell of a lot better in the context of me going against them if we had to stay in a Wing Chun format. But the JKD format does not limit me to Pak Sao, Lop Sao, Chuk Chun Choi. And then also earlier on, remember you had the concepts guys and you had all these other guys that were with good intention, you know, doing the Kali and doing Muay Thai and doing this and this and this and calling that JKD. But what was really missing watching that is watching those guys trying to make a transition from one system to another. They didn't have that flow or that fine fix. And to me, I'm not going to necessarily say it's because they didn't understand the platform. It's just they didn't understand the idea of being able to flow from one thing to another, even though in each thing that they did, they were proficient. But it was like watching a clip of a black and white movie, a clip of a homemade movie, and then a clip of a, Hollywood production movie. And, there was no flow, even though what
No
they were
fluidity.
attempting to do made sense.
Yeah,
So,
no fluidity. And see, that's
yeah.
why I completely agree. That's why in my class, what my focus on is, okay, of course, we focus on hitting hard. And
Mhm.
as I get older, that means something different to me than it used
Yeah,
to.
it does.
Uh, but you focus on, like I was doing a straight blast. I shouldn't even mention this. I've been working on straight blast recently, and I just blasted a bunch out and just threw my right shoulder out. But the idea is, yes, you need to be able to hit hard. However, uh, that's not the only thing. And so the drills that I come up with, or the drills that Bruce Lee created, or whatever that we focus on, are designed to teach the person how to adapt. It's always about learning how to adapt on the fly and not about a set pattern. And that's again where we benefit, I think. There's a lot of people that are benefiting from the fact that, I mean, Bruce Lee was the one that brought the mindset into modernity, I guess, that said it's okay to learn something outside of the current art that you're in. I mean, even to this day, there you're going to find some of that it's kind of disrespectful to go train with somebody else if you've been with somebody for a while. But if they stick with just Shotokan or whatever, I'm just picking an art out of the air, and that's all they teach, and you feel like there's something else. For me, I don't have time to become as good at grappling as Eric Paulson or as you or whatever. And like you and I, we don't even teach full time. We have other jobs and we have kids and we travel and all that. So if somebody says, "Oh, I'd love to go train with Dennis Blue or train with Eric Paulson," I would say, "Wow, do it," and then come back and show me, what you learn. But the issue is, it's about the also what I teach though is a handful of things. We try to become very clean and powerful and all that. I mean, not trying to say powerful. We're trying to make those our own, as Bruce Lee said, make them so that you feel like if you hit somebody, it's going to make it work. It's going to drop the person or whatever. But the drills that we do constantly are about adaptation. And a lot of times people they hate that because it always makes them feel that they're not good. You'll do a drill and then it's like, oh, I feel off balance. And I'm like, that is the drill. The drill is being off balance. That's what you fighting for your balance is the drill. And so, yeah, like, I completely agree with what you're saying. It's like just tagging more and more martial arts onto it isn't necessarily going to give you that. In fact, it might confuse your brain and your nervous system, or because you're now giving yourself too many responses to the given stimulus, right?
Yeah, so you develop these, the term that I learned was you develop these training scars because you feel incompetent or inefficient in that new thing that you're trying to learn. And it's number one, it's an egotistic thing because we always think that, well, I'm really good at this, so that stuff sucks because I can't do it right away. Well, there's some of us who can learn things really, really quick, but then there's other people that take months and years versus a couple of us who, learn in a couple of minutes or hours. But
Hey,
people do that, and then do they look at, well, that sucks because so and so does. A prime example is, well, maybe one or two examples is that one time up at Tackett's garage, you were still teaching up there, and I went in, and there's a guy that trains with a known person, a couple of known, I mean, big known people,
yep.
and had a tendency to do his own thing while a lesson is being taught. And then when you do the drill, he's doing his thing, and which is not compatible with what we're doing. Well, not necessarily compatible, because as a JKD, you should be able to flow into whatever he's doing. But
He's not able to do it.
he couldn't do it. And the funny thing about it is, because he made a statement about where he was training, I did a drill that was from the exact person that he said he was teaching from. And he was like, oh, no, we would never do that over so and so because he would do this. Like, interesting. You know, it's
Got
just
it from
really interesting because this is one of his drills and you can't do it. I thought you were training there. And, but, you know, then there's that. And then my biggest another story that I like to share is that there was a time where when the group was really, really popular, two guys came up who were Thai boxers, and they were studying. I know their teacher, so you know their teacher's a great guy. But these two guys were, well, one I knew personally because I trained with him in Taekwondo back at Pugil on the day, and then you know he saw me there and he was kind of, whoa, whoa, Dennis Blue, all right. Like, hey, how you doing, man? And I almost said his name, but I'm not going to. And he was with another guy, and the other guy was, you know, heavier dude, and we were doing some drills, and he was like, well, that won't work in Muay Thai. Okay. In fact, I was doing the Fuji drill, and he goes, that wouldn't work. I'm like, why wouldn't it work? He goes, because if I kicked you, I'd kick straight through you. And I'm like, do you know how physically impossible it is for you to do that? He goes, oh, no, no. In Thai boxing, we can kick right through you. I'm like, so your leg is going to go all the way through my body. So if I move an inch, you're going to be able to hit me. He goes, yeah. I go, I guarantee you can't. So we did this, and the guy went to kick me, and I moved. He goes, well, you can't move.
Oh, that's how it works.
I'm like, but if I stay there, you're going to hit me. Yeah. I go, well, you can't kick through me if I move. You know, so it's
That's my
just like
point.
that mentality is that people get locked into one state of mind and they can't see everything else around them. So they believe that everything has to pivot around with their context of their perspective is.
Talk about fighting straw men.
Yeah,
The
right,
perfect opponent.
right. Yeah, craziness. But anyway, what the heck
Yeah.
are we talking about?
Yeah, no, but you're right. They people that is a very good example because yes, people do have those training scars. They go for every other art out there, and then they go, I'm going to add a little, and this is where again back to the main topic. I think that this is the problem. People don't really understand what JKD is. They go, I hear this all the time. It's like, and maybe this is just they're just trying to impress you with how many things they've studied. But you'll see a guy in the MMA and they go, this guy studies grappling and he studies boxing and he studies Muay Thai and he studies Savat and he studies Jeet Kune Do and and there's like 15 things. It's like if he really truly studied JKD, I don't think he'd be wasting his time on some of the other ones. And he if he was truly studying and training in JKD, he may not have time. Like
Hmm.
you would be um, working on condensing your tool, you're right, your tool belt into very useful tools and
Yeah, right.
you know what I'm saying? So it's like, and instead of and again, I'm not saying that the other arts that I was mentioning are bad or that you can't use them. Of course you can use them. You see them, people winning fights with them all the time. But the point that Bruce was saying was daily decrease. So that's my point. I'm not trashing the arts that people study, but when you say, "Oh, I studied JKD on top of 3,000 other arts I'm currently going after," I'm like, "Well, then you're not studying JKD because
Yeah,
you're
I mean,
not."
it's like you can't be a master chef, you know, if your menu has like 15 pages, you
Yeah,
know. When you go to a really good restaurant, the menu is not that large because they specialize in a certain cuisine. And
yeah,
then that chef, if you go to a restaurant with a real chef, you know, that's his forte, you know. And then a lot of people,
yeah.
you know, as you mentioned, they people are lazy, mentally lazy is what it is. Because with JKD, and it's been termed, is a, what was the term? Tim always used the term required physical intelligence.
Yes.
And
Which
not only the physical intelligence, but it requires a mindset that allows you to understand what we're trying to do is you take a few things and you make them work in whatever given environment that you have. And then while you're doing that, if you're not as efficient the first time that you attempted something, it failed you, and like in shooting and stuff, we always say you want to go to fail. You want to go until you can't get it right, and then you have to start over and get it right.
Mm.
But a lot of people, they don't get it right the first time, so they're frustrated with it. Well, I worked it against this guy and it didn't work. Well, how many times did you try that? Well, I did it once and he hit me. Okay, did you try it again? No, because I didn't want to get hit. Well, it's the same thing with the whole learning of JK and what we do, or should be doing,
Yeah.
is focusing on those few things and making them work. And if it, again, like I said, if you get to that point where you go to failure, why did you get to that point? What did you do that you should have done better? People don't stop and analyze.
Mm.
And the other thing that's important too is to have an instructor or teacher or coach or trainer who is actually going to watch you and you know point those things out for you. If you can't see them for yourself, even if you record yourself, you can go back and say, well, I should have done this. Or if your partner, who should be your training partner slash coach, should say, well, you did this, that's why I got you. See, that is how it works. But a lot of people get in there with a competitive attitude that, I have to go as hard and as fast as I can with this. And, well, and if it doesn't work the first time, it's crap.
Yeah. I mean, how many people I've had question a drill? Well, I just don't think I could do that, and I point out it's like, or they said, this guy, I tried this and this guy, he blocked it or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to get rid of jabs. We're going to get rid of our straight lead,
Mm.
and everything else. What? Why? I said, oh, well, you've never seen somebody block a jab. You've never seen somebody cover a punch. So you were saying if anyone can stop it, then it's not useful. And so you
Mm.
shouldn't try to refine your ability. But it's funny, like the guys that train with us, I know for a fact, train with you, train with me, and some of our other guys that are actually proficient. And I'm trying to gently distinguish between what's called JKD and the few people that actually spend time training and learning, even as an instructor, learning and refining and becoming better instead of just going out for this big buffet of movements. But the people that train with us, I'll give an example. My son is one of them that they're surprised when they're better than other people. They're like, he went into a Thai boxing school and he was doing Thai boxing with me. He was doing, so this isn't an anti-Thai boxing story. He went in to train with them, and he was like surprised. He was expecting to be so low down on the totem pole because we are JKD guys that just do some Thai boxing. I said, yeah, but we refine everything. If we're doing a Thai boxing kick, we do it until we feel like we have it.
Right.
And I'm sure that school probably goes through some of the same issues that we do, but that particular little school that he went into, it was probably more of just a money machine, and he was just like, and I had another one of my students go to an MMA school, and they asked him there, they said, we know you do JKD, would you mind coming and sparring with us? And I was like, he was a little wary. They were nice, but when he went, he goes, I was really surprised they couldn't touch me. And but it's like, and again, I'm not saying every MMA school is like that. I'm saying is that there's a lot of people out there that martial arts to them is just uh, it's just how many things can you get on your plate
Mm.
before you go back to the buffet one more time, and this is when you and this is also the problem. You and I have struggled with this because people get bored with excellence,
Mhm.
right, and refinement of and that's what they don't understand. People don't get that JKD isn't that complicated. Like it's not easy, but it's not complicated. I mean, you could teach JKD to somebody in a sense of showing them in one day easily, as far as showing them what you do. But you could never drill them in a way that would get them good in one day. You that and
Mhm.
people go, well, you already showed me this. You already showed me this. When Taka used to say this all the time. We go to a seminar or we go to like an instructor's camp where we're teaching as a guest, And they'd say, Sifu, you taught us this last year. We already know this. And he'd say, no, you don't. You recognize it. And a lot of times it was just the straight lead. Let's do the straight lead. And they would do it. And they say, okay, I guess we're working on the straight lead.
Yeah,
And
that's funny that you mentioned that. Somebody, I don't know who it was, two people today sent me videos of them, one guy working out by himself and two guys training. I don't know who they are. I don't even know how it got through my email. But it's like, am I supposed to be grading somebody or something? But I was watching the one guy who was supposed to, I guess I don't know if he was the senior or the teacher. And I'm like, if he wants me to correct him, I think he's going to be embarrassed because the guy he's training was doing everything absolutely wrong. I mean, his lead jab, he would lean his weight backwards onto the rear foot, step forward with the right foot, and then punch. Like, where is the, I'm losing my mind. Oh,
the technique.
where's the Cobra thing? He should feel the strike before, he
Yeah.
should feel it before he sees it, hand before foot and that kind of stuff. And oh man, that's taking me somewhere else.
Yeah. People would rather practice their Bruce Lee poses than actually get good at doing something that seems simple.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I
I mean,
mean,
even with the straight lead, and look at the variances also on this on the jab itself, because you have one that probes. I mean, you have Bruce's bong, and that's another story for another time. Um, you
phone.
know, and then like for me, what I do is like I have been able to over the many years take a lot of the JKD principles or concept, whatever you want to call them, just the platform.
Mhm.
And like the jab, for example, I mean, compared to the jab in fencing, because there is a jab in fencing, okay? And then, there in saber fighting, there's a thing called the cut. And it's exactly the same thing we do with the jab. We call it a cut, So there's a lot into it that a lot of these guys don't grasp because, well, I can punch with my front hand, I can punch with my front hand, and they miss the mechanics. And the whole thing is constant refinement,
Mhm.
because you can never get better than yourself, but you should always be better than who you are.
That's right.
Because everyone's like, yeah, I'm really good at this, but can you be better than you are right now? And like Bert Poe, the thing he put into my head a long time ago was just like, well, okay, you need to be training, and Sonny would say the same thing. You need to be training for the guy who's better than you, okay? And you need to be
Mhm.
better than him, but he's still training to be better than you. So you've got this continuous progressive
Right.
plateau that you're working towards, and you don't have the time to stop and, go to World Market and pick from the international section all the things that you like. You have to stay with what you can use immediately and make an effort to apply those in an efficient way.
Yeah. And see, and
So
go back to the original question, about JKD being any good, is that this is the issue. What is JKD? And
yeah,
we have in our group, I feel we have a great distillation of the things that not only Bruce Lee taught, but we've gotten from Bruce Lee's students, where the point is that, and we also have some groups that are still hanging on, and that is the hard part, is that as a teacher, you want to teach what will help people to be good, and at the same time you're trying to keep them interested, and in a sense you're trying to be like a kindergarten teacher for some. There are those faithful few that we have that will just show up and train, and they just know that they're learning, they're experiencing, because they can see themselves getting better. But one of the examples of things we run into is that you and I don't really give instructor certificates very quickly. And that's hard for people because I know people want to open schools. I get it. And but first of all, you and I don't have schools. We teach privately. And I welcome people to come train with me. You welcome people to come train with you, but we're not going to be there 5 or 6 days a week, 7 days a week with
yeah,
classes all day long. We have other jobs, like I said. But I've had people start joining. So people come in on Zoom to start training with me. And it's like, and I even worked with them on getting some basic levels, but they want that certificate up on the wall. And they want, and that's the thing is like, it's not that we're trying to keep people from becoming instructors, but like, I'm looking for something. And if I put out a full instructor, which by the way, I never have, and I'm not bragging about that, but I because I don't teach 5 days a week, also, it's like, well, how much am I teaching a person, right? Um, I, I really feel like I should be able to trust that not only this person can teach what I taught and maybe put themselves into it as well, but that they can take care of themselves in a fight, that they can actually apply it. And it becomes really hard because we're trying to keep this group going, and people come and they go, oh, they see that we know what we're doing. They see that connection to Bruce Lee. They can see that we actually can apply it. They've seen that some of us have fought. They've seen some people come in and try to spar, and then they go, wow, you're actually pretty good. Um, but then it's like, well, good. I want to teach this. I'm going to open up a school here in about 3 weeks, and I want to have my full instructorship in this. And when that doesn't happen quickly, I know it's discouraging. And I do understand that. I do understand if that's your business that you want to go into. Um, but usually, they could do private lessons or whatever if they wanted to. It's more expensive. But if that's their business, then they could do it. But people want shortcuts. Like Bruce Lee said, right? They wanted secrets. Well, just give me the secrets of how to become, the greatest. And
Right,
then
yeah.
I'll open my school. So I think that's one of the things that we are struggling with now as a group, because people will go, well, I mean, we do have groups that are affiliates with us and are part of our Wednesday night group. But in general, we're not certifying at this time, like we will be when we get all that organization and stuff together. But these people take care of their own certification. Some of them are quite, we have people in Europe that are very committed to staying and working with us and all that, but it's not easy. We're so far
Mhm.
away. It's expensive for them to fly out constantly, or for us to fly out there. But we do have the goods, right? And so that's the thing. I think people that have trained with us will tell you it's different. And I have a lot of people that train with me and then have trained with other JKD instructors. And I'm happy that not all the stories are bad from other places, but many times they come in and they thought they were at a good place, and then they come in and they go, no, we never learned that. No, we never learned that. And I'm like, well, this is basics. In fact, you'll see it in the Tao Jeet Kune Do, or this is, and it's like they say, yeah, but my instructor was directly under a Bruce Lee student. He was a second generation, and I'm like, not to tell you. Not to tell you that they weren't giving you JKD. They were just giving you some techniques that they picked up. And, if you're lucky, they had them sparring at least,
Mm.
and maybe that helped them. But I mean, that's the thing I've seen is that we don't certify quite very quickly. We don't put tons of instructors out there. And in one side, having a lot of instructors would help the group to sort of say, we'd have people around, okay, we're instructors, and maybe that would help keep our footprint out there so that people would see us all the time. But at the same time, it just dilutes what we have.
Yeah, and two, yeah, yeah, cheapens. But anyway, um, given that point too, there's a lot of guys who I think unmeritoriously have achieved a position to where they were certified, and once they got a piece of paper, they pretty much told the group, I don't need you anymore. I'm an instructor. You know, I've
Yeah,
got I've got my black belt. I am the end all now. I know everything there is to know, and I don't need you guys anymore because you don't know anything. You know.
I'm
So
constant. I was a full instructor in the mid 90s, or maybe shortly after the mid 90s. And I to this day will go, I'll learn something, go, oh man. And sometimes I'm embarrassed. I'm like, I should know that better.
yeah,
I'm an instructor.
yeah,
I'm a senior full instructor in this, and I should be doing this better, and it's like, but if you have an ego and if you're arrogant in this, then you don't want other people to know, and you don't want to know how little you know. Remember, Bruce Lee said, but I found the cause of my ignorance.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
right.
Right.
And so people don't want it, they don't want that. They just want the stamp of approval, and then they could show everybody, like, look, I got this. And now you can be you can trust that being near me is going to mean something.
Mm. Yeah.
One of the big things I think that we benefited from, we talked about this last time, was Bob Bremer. Now, obviously, not to go over the same material that we went over last time, so I'm just hitting this from a different angle. Obviously, he had the nickname, the ass kicker of Chinatown, or Chinatown's ass kicker, from Bruce Lee's last school in Chinatown in the LA area. But he spent a lot of personal time with Bruce Lee. But here's where I feel like people don't really understand why his presence was so important. Just like with Jim Sewell, Bob Bremer didn't really have much to gain to coming to us and teaching and showing us things, except for just some, just hanging out with some guys and being appreciated. He already had money. So as a lot of people were going out there, and Bruce Lee's name was big, and people were starting to first buy the VHS tapes and get the articles out there, he had no interest in that. He wasn't trying to make a name for himself. In fact, I remember for years, and even now, people didn't know who he was, because he was never out there to get his name out there and to make money off of it. And so when he said something, I could trust him. But one of the things that he really stood out to me is we had a get together at Cass Magda's school in Reseda. And there was a lot of the Bruce Lee students there. I know Ted Wong was there, Tackett, Bob Bremer, Jim was there. I can't remember if Daniel Lee was there.
Danny Lee was there.
Daniel Lee was there too. Okay, you were there. But a lot of the original students were there. And one of the questions that was asked that night, because the UFC was out and everything, and they said, could you honestly answer this question? The person asked, and I was glad they asked it. They said, with all of the new fighting, all of the new martial artists, and all this, you personally knowing Bruce Lee, have you ever seen anyone that gets close to, compares, or surpasses Bruce Lee? And Bob, without any hesitation, said, not even close, not even close. And he says, I was there. I saw it. So it's one thing to watch a movie and say, oh, well, look, I saw Jet Li and his movie looked really fantastic. That's film styles. This is different. And when you realize Bruce wasn't typically using cables and stuff like that, in general, like a lot of that stuff was just his speed and power that you were seeing a lot of the time. I don't know if there was cables here and there for something, but in general, you would see him. But Bob was like, I worked with him, and I've worked with a lot of other martial artists over the years. And he said, I've never seen anyone like him. And so that to me stuck, because again, if Bob was starting a school up, or if he was trying to make a video series, and okay, maybe he's trying to pump Bruce's name up so he could make some money. He wasn't charging for these events he went to. He wasn't, in fact, a lot of times it cost him money, right? He was a millionaire. Bob was already a millionaire. So he was just telling the truth. So I don't know. I mean, that to me, that was one of the big things. And as when you see, a lot of the newer fighters, and Bob passed away in what, 2011? I think it was 2011, or 2012.
I think so.
And he would still watch, fighting and thing. He never changed. And so there's two sides to that, though. One side is that Bruce Lee trained like a maniac. That's one aspect of it. But Bob was able to study it and work with him on the actual JKD, and he would tell us his own stories and say the reason he walked away from what he was training in before he met Bruce was because he said the first day he worked with Bruce, he thought, I can't waste any more time at the other place, at the other art. He saw immediately how much it would improve his fighting. Bob was already, in the Merchant Marines. He had already had quite a few street fights, as they used to do.
Yeah.
But he was like, he said, you remember him, right? Say that, like, he was like, it was there was no comparison. He's like, I am not leaving this guy, this Bruce Lee fellow. I'm never gonna let him out of my sight if I can help it.
Stupid cure.
So I mean, I don't know. So as far as is JKD actually good? So the question is, do people know how to train? Do people know what JKD is? When you get what actually JKD is, it's physical, it's scientific. And so the problem is there's not a lot of people that train with actual JKD that go out and then fight in the cage. And then you're still saying, well, you're fighting in a sport. So are you applying JKD? You can apply some of the principles, but that becomes another issue. You're trying to prove that a street fighting art works by going into a sport. Right.
Well, there's another picture with that too. Is just if you look at JKD, or I'm even at the point where I even hate using the acronym JKD, because it's just like too many people have a misunderstanding. And even Bruce quoted that he didn't even want to label it, but
That's right.
the name stuck, so there it is. But you know if you look at the difference between, let's go back in time, between a gladiator, a Roman soldier, and a warrior.
Mm.
Those are three different types of people who are all doing essentially the same thing, but they have different contexts. A gladiator, other than the fact that he was a slave, and, until he died, that's what he's going to do. So his whole purpose was survival in a ring. So all he had to think about is surviving in the ring. As real as it was, it wasn't on the same level as when you have the Roman soldier. What did the Roman soldier have to do? Well, they moved in groups. They had tactics and strategies, and they had these other things that were a little different. And then they had some other benefits to them. They had archers and they had chariots, and so their fighting was different. And then you have the warrior, which is pretty much the individual who is committed to his, let's say, tribe, versus the empire. It's like, I will fight for Rome, but I will fight for this section of Rome, not all of Rome. So the mentality was different, because that warrior is going to have to end up fighting everybody. The gladiator is just going to be he's stuck in a coliseum or in some arena somewhere for entertainment. And then you have the soldier who is being told where to go, and he has to fight differently. They all fight for survival in different ways. And I lost my point. But yeah, those are different aspects. And I know some people have asked me if I could train their fighters, and of course I can.
Yeah.
Um, sometimes, well, can you train me this way? Well, okay, first of all, you're asking me to train you the way you want me to train you, versus you asking me to train you the way I want to train you. Okay.
What happened to emptying your cup?
Yeah. It's just like, I need you to be able to do this. I'm watching what you do. This is not made for you.
Mhm.
You are not mobile enough to do what you're doing. So you should try this. Well, I've been doing this. I just want to get better at this. Okay. Well, you see, there's a freeway that if you go down this freeway every single day, and it runs into a wall today, and you go tomorrow and it hits a wall, and then the next day it hits a wall, you're going to keep hitting that wall. So until you make that turn, you know, you're going to keep hitting that wall. So,
Mhm. How
so
many
enough
people
of
I've
that
had?
in the Dunning-Kruger effect, or Dunning-Kruger effect.
I don't know how many people I've had that'll tell me, you're doing a drill or something. It's like, well, um, we always did it this way. And what ends up happening is you're seeing is that they don't want to do it the way you're doing it because it's harder. So, because I'm always like, because it's like, especially if they train another JKD place or whatever, or I don't know, boxing or something, and you're doing a drill, and it's like they always need to tell you, oh, we did it this way, we did it differently. And it's like it's because they don't feel as proficient as everybody else. So I'm telling you that, and then many times I'll see that and they'll do it the way that they did it at the other place over and over again instead of doing it the way I'm showing them and telling them. And my comment that my class hears me all the time, because we do have people that have trained in a lot of other places, and it is natural, is I'll just say, don't change my drill. Do it the way I'm telling you. But yeah, you got those training scars. I mean, I
You
know,
must empty your cup.
yeah,
Taste
empty
my
your
cup of
cup.
tea.
How you gonna taste my cup of tea? It is like, yeah, how many of these people, have these? I mean, I don't know how many of it is just you can't teach old dogs new tricks. I do run into that where it's like somebody's like getting up there and you say, okay, so and the problem is they feel proficient in what they do. That's the big problem. They're coming to train, and a lot of times they just want to be part of something, and they might
Yeah.
want to just be able to say that they're training or whatever. And you say, well, you need to do this. And a year later, you'll visit my class and you'll go, how come he's not putting his hip into his kick or turning his foot or whatever, and I'll be like, I only tell him every day. I've grabbed him, I've adjusted him, beat him with sticks. It doesn't help. So I don't know some of that, but in the overall scheme of things, yeah, you're right. Like people don't necessarily know what they want when they say, I want to learn, and like I said, they sometimes they want you to train them in sport or they want, um, I think that JKD learning some of the things can enhance sport, but the problem is that it's very easy for it to take over, and then that becomes the focus. And we're
Yeah.
trying to pass this on, and it's not just trying to beat a dead horse. We're not just passing this on because we all liked Bruce Lee, and I'm sure there's people out there that would do it, that would just say, hey, I'm going to pass this on. It's not quite good anymore, but we all like Bruce Lee. But the fact is, I mean, we've had fights. I still have people come in from other places, and I've got plenty of injuries in case you want to know, and so I can't really sometimes spar as hard as I used to. Wrap my knees up and try to keep from hurting my shoulders and all.
Excuses.
you know. But I'll get out there and I just do light sparring with people, and I don't really think about it. I'm just out there, just we're just boxing, just doing some jabs, or some sort of isolation sparring, just to work things. And I've had people come later and go, "Okay, so you're the real deal." And I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" Like the fact is, they felt like nobody had ever been able to hit them or not be hit by them or whatever, even their teachers. So I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, there is a difference. There are some good places out there. And then, and then it is, what is it that people are trying to learn? Some people want to learn everything that Bruce Lee taught. They want to learn everything that he threw away. They're digging through his garbage. Um, which was what fans will do, right? They'll go through a movie star's trash. Oh,
Yeah.
wow, they blew their nose with this. But that's not really for me. I don't really have the time. Historically, it's interesting. I remember Bob telling us, that Bruce tossed this out or threw this away or was moving towards getting rid of some of these things. Or just simplifying can look like throwing something away because you don't do all of the same drills and all of the same poses and all of that. Um, but yeah, in the long run, I feel like it's sad because people JKD is a very useful and wonderful science.
Right. Yeah. And it is viable to this day. And it is not so much that JKD itself has failed people. It's the people who profess to be practicing JKD who have failed the platform.
That's right.
Because, well, I don't want to, I get you run into people like, well, I don't want to work that hard.
Mhm.
Or, well, I've already done this a couple of times.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I've tied my shoes a couple of times, but I still have to wear my shoes, you know. So, but
Yes.
you know, so the basic answer to everything is that yeah, JKD still works. I mean, you can't all of a sudden say that, well, no one should ever throw a punch again because everyone's grappling. Well, I mean, what? What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
you see it all the
Yeah,
time.
there, everything has a time and a place. And then in that time, what you do in that particular place determines the outcome of your fight based on, again, your perspective versus your perception into things. Is you might think that you're seeing things are supposed to be this way, but that's the way you want to see it. Remember, you have an active an opponent who's also thinking. And now if you're both thinking differently, like I'm thinking I just do this and I just do this, you guys are going to come at each other, and you're probably not going to it's not going to become a fight anymore. It's going to become entertainment, because I trained in Long Gao Shang Fist and I trained in this, and it's no longer a fight. You got this going on,
He
and
flaps his hands.
yeah. Oh, that was in that video I was watching too. I was like, oh my gosh. It's like this. Okay, anyway, but
Yeah.
yeah, so it does work. And then again, it goes back to, well, I'll have to add another thing to that, is that it also goes back to who you're learning from. Because there's a lot of guys out there who say I feel are unmerited in terms of why they received an instructorship of any kind.
Hmm.
Because bottom line, and I don't mean to be mean, but I do, is that they suck. I mean,
What do you mean by that?
what do I mean by that? If we let's see, if
You're right.
I mean, one, they are not physically intelligent. Their movement is awkward. It's not smooth. It's not dynamic. They don't flow. Two, they don't have the intellectual understanding of what's transpiring when they do something, or why you do it, other than them en route repeating exactly what their teacher told them, but they can't explain it. So someone's like, well, why do you do it this way and not this way? Because this is the drill.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is this the drill? Because this is this. It's like, but that doesn't even mean I'm the teacher. Okay,
Yeah.
teacher, then you should be able to teach me something.
Teach me something.
Why this instead of that? And so you have too many, I don't know. You got too many guys out there who seriously, I mean, if a driver's license was issued the way that certification was issued, um, this is going to get political. Um, Everyone wanted to have a driver's license, but even though they don't earn one, it's just like driving down the street, and you find the 86-year-old woman who, you just look at them when they're driving. Oh my gosh, they should have a driving test every 2 years.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
same with the JKD, is that people get a piece of paper and all of a sudden, I
Yes.
am king. This is my empire. Well, if you're a king, you'd have a kingdom, and if you're an emperor, you'd be an emperor. Yes, that's what I meant. But they get that mentality that they have come to the the epitome of what it is to be in JKD. And I liked when I was in Taekwondo, Pugo would tell me, you got your black belt, but you know what that means, don't you? It means you're starting all over. This is the beginning. All that other stuff is just to get you ready to start. And
Yeah, that's great. That's what I was thinking about, that is an issue in that sometimes it's a blessing. There's been times I wish that I'd started a school just so I could have, take the time to really get a lot of students to work with, so we'd have different blood to work with it. But the things that I think that some people struggle with is that in order to have a school, you have to give people those little slips of paper or the
yeah, you
belt.
have to give them a reward. I mean, that's what children want. They want to feel rewarded.
And eventually you got to make them a teacher, it seems. Like I told my son and I told my class, I said, look, I will certify, I'm testing, and we're doing all this stuff. And I've been working with you on some of the requirements too for the group. And I said, but if you don't want to teach, you don't need to go for the instructor certificates. I said that people think of that as a black belt. People think of it as,
Right,
well, I need to keep
right.
showing that I'm getting better and better. So, let me be a teacher. And
Yeah. Because,
just,
like for myself, start to cut you off, but I never wanted to be a teacher. Never. The only reason why I started teaching is because I needed a training partner. So I said, okay, I want you to work. Can you work out with me? And okay, well, what do I do? Okay, let's do this. And the next thing you know, I'm having to teach this guy because he did something else and it's different. The next thing you know, I'm teaching. And then with in the garage with Tackett, I didn't want to be a teacher. It's just one day he did a Tackett. He goes, I want you to get, can you show him this? Dennis, get out there. And the next thing you know, there I am
and a fine
rapidly
teacher you are.
out on the floor. So,
A fine
and it goes
teacher.
back to the other thing you were talking about when you got your full instructorship.
Yeah.
Even up to that point, I didn't even have a certificate from Tackett. I had nothing, and I was okay with it.
Yeah.
And I know because I had left the group for some reasons, and then I know yourself, and I don't know who else asked if I could come back. And then like, oh, and then here's your certificate. I'm like,
Yeah.
to this day, I don't know where that thing is because I really don't care. My thing is I want to perpetuate from all the things that we have been privileged and honored to get because through that garage, and you had mentioned this earlier, that when I first went there before you were even born, that at that time, it was Tim, and then Mark Buster was there. There were a couple other older guys there, Barry Dixon, who's passed away, a couple other guys who had backgrounds and other things, but these were guys who knew what was going on at that time. And then I came into the garage, and then the next thing you know, oh gosh, Bert's there. And then soon after that, there were a couple of other retired ex-professional boxers that had hung around there because Bert was coaching the Redlands Police Athletic League boxing team and everything. And then I'd gone off to the service for a while, came back. And then a couple of years later, that's when, let's see, oh my gosh, so many things have happened. I know that Tim had sent me down to introduce me to Dan, started sending me down there. I would go down to the Inosanto Academy when it was on Glencoe and Marina Del Rey, work out there once or twice a week, observe or take a class. And then the next thing you know, Sonny shows up. And then after Sonny shows up, Sonny was Bob's neighbor, and we talked about this last time. And then Bob starts showing up, and then Bob started introducing us to other people who were Bruce Lee students. The original guys from Chinatown anyway. So I met Jerry Petit and hung out with uh, Pete Jacobs
Mhm.
and even at Pete Jacobs' house, all these guys would drop in once in a while. Jerry Petit would drop by once in a while. Sometimes you get Steve Golden when he came down from Oregon. You get all these guys and they're meeting here. It's just like every Friday you're meeting somebody new and you're hanging out and you're learning.
Mhm.
Not only you're learning, but as everyone who knows Bob knows, he was a master storyteller, right? So he's always
Mhm.
telling these
Well,
stories, and then these guys would confirm exactly what he was talking about.
yeah.
There's other stories that they confirmed about things that they used to do. Like the story at the beach where the guy threw a rock and Bruce climbed up the wall and after that guy and everything.
The cliff.
Yeah, like okay, but yeah. So
Bruce would fight.
the uniqueness is still the biggest selling point because what other group of JKD has had that? They either have just this guy or just this guy, or maybe they got lucky for a short period of time where they had this guy and this guy. But I mean, oh my gosh, we had full time. We had Bob, and then we had Jim full time, and then we had what were some of the other guys that showed up besides Bill and oh, I
Oh
forgot
yeah.
Bob's other son's name. But
Yeah, I
then
can
a couple
remember
of other
Bob.
guys that used to go work out in
Mhm.
Chinatown, they would
That's
show
right.
up and they'd bring a copy of their certificate and put it up on Tackett's walls. So,
That's
we had
right.
all these guys who worked out in Chinatown, and we could see,
The progression
yeah,
and
not only the progression, but perspective because each one of them
perspective.
saw they could do the drill, but each one
Mhm.
described it a little bit differently, showed it a little bit differently, but it was the same bloody
Mhm.
thing.
Yes.
And
Good
that's what a
point.
lot of these guys don't have. They can't see the difference because they have this one guy telling, "Oh, this is the way Bruce taught me."
Yeah.
Yeah, yes and no, because Bruce did individualize things for people.
Yep.
Because you know John Stiff over here, can't do this, so
Hmm.
try this. And that's the uniqueness,
That's
because you're
right. Yeah.
almost going back to I don't know if you remember Tracy Studios, where everyone is a cookie cutter martial arts school, where everyone was doing the exact same way.
Yeah.
you know. But even in Chinatown, it wasn't that way. Well, you move a little bit more like this. Look at the way Ted moved versus, the way Bob moved. You got a freight train versus a dancer. Different things. So people learn differently, and you can learn from each of those because you can adapt that to your personality and your personality in the persona of who you are as a fighter, martial artist, whatever you want to call yourself.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great
Sure.
point because when people say, "Oh, I worked with this Bruce Lee student," it was always a seminar where we had, five of them
Right, right,
sometimes
right. Yeah.
hanging around and we were
Yeah.
picking their brains, and we did have Tim Tackett and you know that was the amazing thing. It's like you said, it was sometimes I'd show up and I was the only student because you were already a teacher, so and it'd be like with all of these people, sometimes it'd be a little much. Everybody's critiquing you, but Bob had the great stories, and yeah, like you said, they don't
Mm.
have the different, and it's like they would back up the fact that Bob was the ass kicker of that group, but they also, yeah, they had their own points of view, their own eagle eye views of looking at things and remembering how Bruce did things and stuff. But it all came down to application, and Bob was always teaching us how to simplify and even when we're going through the Gracie jiu-jitsu stuff in the 90s, he was coming in and looking at it, said, make sure everything you learn, you look at it through your JKD goggles, your JKD
Mhm.
glasses, right? And can he stick his fingers in your eyes? Can you stick your fingers in his eyes? That kind of thing. And to this day, I think like that. Even if we have to practice the technique.
That right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yes, so the answer is, JKD does work. It does work, but that it's a hard question to answer because you get what you put into it, like any other art. The problem is there's enough people that have done Thai boxing and other things that are out there that promote it with fighting and this and that, and it's sport. But that's that's still, when you ask, does Thai boxing work? If you go in there once a year and half-ass train, you're not going to win a fight, even if you've had 30 classes over 30 years.
Yeah.
But yes, does JKD work? If you work it, I think that everyone that trains it, some people have physical limitations. Some people I've got a student that's got severe scoliosis, but it improves you. I think that you become better. As long as you're working at what you're supposed to be working, you will become better at seeing and adapting, which sometimes that's fighting. Sometimes it might help you keep you from hitting your head on a branch as you're walking, you know. But as Bruce Lee said, everything, what do you say? Everything I learned from martial art or something like that when he was in that last Pierre Burton interview. What did he say? Anyway, the point being is that when you really look at JKD as a whole, you can apply it to different aspects of your life.
Hey, yep.
It's not just attacking people. And I think that's why people have trouble nailing it down. And as we said, there's a lot of bad representatives of JKD.
Oh,
Well,
yes.
I've watched Enter the Dragon a few times, and what happens is you throw your hand up here, and then you can pox out this guy's arm when he comes at you. And then it doesn't work, and they go, well, that stuff's a bunch of junk. It doesn't work.
It's baloney.
Yeah. But yes, JKD works, and Bruce Lee was a good fighter. Um, the people that knew him, he was an explosive, powerful athlete, but he focused on fine tuning everything about his physical being, as well as making sure that the most direct scientific things that he could do in a fight, that he worked on those the most. And so anyone that saw him fight said it was scary. Arguing whether or not he could beat somebody up today is foolish. There's no point to discuss.
Yeah, it verges on retarded. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. It's just like,
could Bruce Lee beat Mike Tyson? You know, it's like, come on. Bruce Lee's not here to discuss it. Why should we? Why should we be the ones to talk about that? But yeah, I mean, the fact is, I think that he would still be practicing. I think he'd still be training. I think he'd still be learning. But he wouldn't have changed.
Imagine the level of sophistication and simplicity.
Yes.
I'm 90 years old and I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to do this.
He just uses.
That's what I want to learn.
Exactly.
That's what I want to learn.
Okay, I'll teach you when I get there.
Cool.
When I get to 90.
Wait. I'm older than you.
Oh, I guess you're going to have to wait till the other side. When we get to heaven, I'll show you. You'll already know, though.
Oh, you know what? The sad part that you say that is, what's the point?
Exactly. Right. Like
all this stuff is all this carnal, earthly stuff, and once we get gone, it's like,
yeah.
I wasted my whole life on that shit.
Yeah. I know. I was telling my son that, you know, when we get to heaven, you realize I will be so happy that nobody cares that I'm good at fighting, or that I was good at fighting, or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, I think that this was a good discussion. I think we've made our point. We have a guest coming up in the near future that I will mention.
Yeah, I just talked to him yesterday, the day before. Yeah. Well, I talked to him.
Yes.
Texting.
Yes. So we have Octavio Quintero will be a guest in the near future, and he's quite an interesting individual, and he's a fun guy to be around. I'll just say quickly, Dennis and I both got to work alongside him in Germany. I did a seminar over there, and they really love Petit over there in that particular area. And only one of my students really knew who the Wednesday night group was. So it was, I shared a little event, and I never had met him before and did not know what to expect, but, and Dennis was there, and we had a great time. It was, he's a great guy, really knowledgeable and fun, and does a lot other than just JKD. So yeah, he's got a lot of other things going on in his life. So we will let you know exactly when that's going to take place. Keep tuning in, and as Bob used to say, keep on blasting.
Or as Tackett would say.
Yeah, no. Cut. All right, good night, everybody.
All right.
You're listening to this.
Hey, Slug Tofu.